There is a law that no one can break. The greatest empires fall faster when they touch what they shouldn't touch. We believe that military power is invincible. We believe that numbers decide everything, but the universe always finds a way to balance the scales. There was a man, the most powerful king in the known world, who gathered the largest army ever seen to destroy a small and arrogant city. He carried with him 185,000 soldiers, siege engines, war elephants, the most advanced military technology of their era. They surrounded Jerusalem with the certainty of one who knows that victory is mathematical. And the next morning, 185,000 men lay dead. Without battle wounds, without signs of struggle. They simply stopped breathing during the night. And the most powerful king in the world fled home to be murdered by his own sons while worshipping his gods. His name was Sennacherib, and what happened to him that night defies all rational explanation. The year is 701 BC. The Assyrian Empire dominates the known world. From the mountains of Anatolia to the shores of the Persian Gulf, from the Arabian desert to the gates of Egypt, everything belongs to Assyria. And Assyria is synonymous with terror. They did not conquer territories, they erased them. Their tactic was simple: total destruction. When the Assyrians arrived at a city, they did not just loot it, they depopulated it. They impaled the leaders on stakes in front of the walls. They skinned the rulers while they were still breathing. They deported entire populations to foreign lands so they could never rebel. And they engraved everything in stone, detailed reliefs where they boasted of their atrocities. It was not sadism without purpose. It was strategy, terror as a political weapon. And the architect of this empire at its peak was Sennacherib, son of Sargon II, heir to a dynasty that had turned Assyria into the most efficient military machine in ancient history. Sennacherib was not an impulsive warrior. He was a strategist, an engineer, a builder. He transformed Nineveh, his capital, into the most magnificent city in the world. He built alabaster palaces, gardens irrigated with aqueducts bringing water from the mountains. He erected walls so thick that chariots could pass over them, and he engraved on the walls of his palace each of his victories. But there was a problem, a persistent annoyance in the far west of his empire, a mountainous and poor region called Judah, and its king, a man named Hezekiah, had committed the gravest mistake any vassal could make. He had rebelled. Judah was insignificant in military terms. It did not have a professional army. It had no powerful allies. It was a small kingdom caught between Egypt to the south and Assyria to the north. Its only resource was its God, Yahweh, the God of Israel. And Hezekiah, unlike his predecessors, had bet everything on this God. He had destroyed the idols. He had closed the pagan sanctuaries. He had centralized worship in Jerusalem. And he had committed the madness of ceasing to pay tribute to Assyria. Sennacherib could not allow this. Not for the money. Judah's tribute was insignificant compared to the riches of Babylon or Egypt. But the rebellion was contagious. If Judah got away with it, other vassals would do the same. The empire would crumble from the edges. So Sennacherib gathered his army and marched westward. The year was 701 BC. The Assyrian campaign began with brutal efficiency. Sennacherib devastated 46 fortified cities in Judah. The Assyrian text is specific: 46. It is not a rounded number. It is an exact count. Each city was besieged, captured, depopulated. The inhabitants were deported. 200,000 people, according to Sennacherib's annals, were taken as slaves. The fertile lands were handed over to neighboring kings, loyal to Assyria. Judah was systematically dismembered, and Hezekiah was terrified. He tried to negotiate. He sent a message to Sennacherib: "I have sinned. Retreat from me, and I will pay whatever you impose." It was a total surrender, a plea. And Sennacherib responded with a demand: 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. It was an impossible sum. Hezekiah emptied the temple's treasury. He tore out the gold covering the sanctuary doors. He stripped the columns. He gathered every ounce of precious metal in Jerusalem, and he sent it to Sennacherib. But it was not enough, because Sennacherib did not want silver. He wanted submission. He wanted Jerusalem to be an example. He wanted the world to know that rebelling against Assyria was suicide, so he rejected the surrender. And he surrounded Jerusalem with his army. The numbers are clear in ancient texts. 185,000 Assyrian soldiers camped around the walls of Jerusalem. It was a perfect sight. They had cut off the water supply. They had blocked all escape routes. They brought battering rams, siege towers, ramps. The city was doomed. It was only a matter of time. Sennacherib sent his envoy, the Rabshakeh, to negotiate surrender. But it was not a negotiation. It was a public humiliation. The Rabshakeh stood before the walls of Jerusalem and shouted in Hebrew so that everyone in the city could hear. He did not speak in Aramaic, the diplomatic language. He spoke in Hebrew. He wanted the people to listen. He wanted to sow panic. What do you trust in to rebel against me? Do you trust in Egypt, that broken reed? Do you trust in your God, that God whose altars Ezekiah has destroyed? Do you think your God can deliver you from my hand? Did the gods of other nations deliver them? Where are the gods of Hamath, Arpad, Sepharvaim? Could they save Samaria? It was relentless logic. All the cities that had trusted their gods had fallen. Samaria, the capital of the northern kingdom of Israel, had been destroyed by Sennacherib's father. Its inhabitants had been deported. Their God had not saved them. Why would Jerusalem be different? Hezekiah was broken. He tore his clothes. He covered himself with sackcloth. He entered the temple, and he sent an urgent message to the prophet Isaiah, the most respected prophet of Judah, the man who had warned that rebellion against Assyria would be a disaster. Hezekiah sent him this message: "Today is a day of distress, of rebuke, and of blasphemy. The children are about to be born, and there are no forces to give birth. Perhaps the Lord your God will hear the words of the Rabshakeh, whom his lord, the king of Assyria, sent to blaspheme the living God." It was a desperate plea. Perhaps God will do something. Perhaps, because humanly speaking, there was no hope, and Isaiah's response was impossible. "Do not fear, thus says the Lord. Because of the words you have heard, with which the servants of the king of Assyria have blasphemed me, behold, I will put a spirit in him, and he will hear a rumor and return to his land. And I will make him fall by the sword in his land." It was a specific prophecy. Sennacherib would not take Jerusalem. He would not shoot a single arrow against the city. He would return to his land, and he would die by assassination. But there were 185,000 reasons not to believe. 185,000 Assyrian soldiers camped around the walls, the most powerful army in the world, the most efficient military machine in history. Against a city without water, without allies, without hope, Sennacherib sent another message, this time in writing, a letter personally addressed to Hezekiah. "Do not let your God in whom you trust deceive you. Do not believe that Jerusalem will be delivered. You have heard what the kings of Assyria have done to all the lands, destroying them. And will you be delivered? Did the gods of the nations they destroyed deliver them?" Hezekiah took the letter, went up to the temple, and spread it out before the Lord. He literally placed it on the altar, and he prayed. He did not pray for victory. He did not pray for miracles. He prayed for vindication. "Lord, you who dwell among the cherubim, you made the heavens and the earth. Incline your ear and hear. Open your eyes and see. Hear the words of Sennacherib, which he has sent to blaspheme the living God. Truly, Lord, the kings of Assyria have destroyed the nations and their lands, and they have cast their gods into the fire. But they were not gods, but works of men's hands, wood and stone. That is why they destroyed them. Now, therefore, Lord our God, deliver us from his hand, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that only you, O Lord, are God." And that night, something happened. The biblical text describes it in a single line. "The angel of the Lord went out and struck down 185,000 in the camp of the Assyrians. When the morning came, behold, all were dead bodies. All were corpses, not some, all. 185,000 men lay dead when morning came. There were no signs of battle, no wounds, no blood. They simply ceased to exist during the night. Sennacherib fled, the most powerful king in the world, the man who had destroyed 46 cities, the conqueror who had never known defeat, fled like a criminal. He returned to Nineveh, and he never again mentioned Jerusalem in his annals. And this is where history becomes verifiable. Because we have the Assyrian records, we have the clay prisms where Sennacherib engraved his campaigns. And the Taylor prism, discovered in the 19th century, describes the campaign against Judah with obsessive detail. It speaks of the 46 cities destroyed, It speaks of the 200,000 people deported. It speaks of the tribute Hezekiah paid. But about Jerusalem, it says something strange. I shut Hezekiah up like a bird in a cage. It does not say that he took the city. It does not say that he destroyed it. It says that he shut it up. It is the closest admission to a defeat that an Assyrian king would ever record. Because the Assyrian kings did not lose. They could not lose. Every campaign ended in absolute victory, except this one. And then comes the second part of the prophecy. Isaiah had said that Sennacherib would die by assassination in his own land. And 20 years later, while Sennacherib was worshipping in the temple of his god, Nisroch in Nineveh, his own sons, Adramelech and Sharezer, killed him with a sword. Assyrian texts confirm this. Sennacherib was murdered by his sons in a palace coup, and they fled to Ararat. And his other son Esarhaddon took the throne. Two impossible prophecies, both fulfilled. Sennacherib would not take Jerusalem, and he would die by assassination at the hands of his sons. The odds of guessing both are astronomical, unless they were not riddles. But the question that no one can answer satisfactorily is, what killed 185,000 soldiers in a single night? The religious answer is simple: an angel. The angel of the Lord. The same being who had killed the firstborn of Egypt. The same one who had stopped Abraham's hand over Isaac. The same who had wrestled with Jacob. It was not an angel of light and harps. It was the angel of death, the executor of divine judgments. But skeptics seek natural explanations, and there are several theories. The first is a plague. Perhaps an epidemic swept through the Assyrian camp overnight. Bubonic plague, cholera, typhus. Ancient armies were vulnerable to diseases. They camped in unsanitary conditions. They drank contaminated water. An infection could spread rapidly. But this theory has problems. Plagues do not kill in a single night. They have incubation periods, days of symptoms. And 185,000 men do not die simultaneously from illness. Some would fall ill earlier, others later. There would be panic, attempts to escape. But the texts do not describe any of that. They describe a sudden silence, a morning when everyone was simply dead. The second theory is poisoning. Perhaps the water was contaminated. Perhaps someone sabotaged the supplies. But again, the timing is impossible. 185,000 men do not drink poisoned water at the same time. And the poison that kills instantly without prior symptoms does not exist. The third theory is more intriguing. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing 200 years later, mentions an Assyrian campaign against Egypt that ended in disaster. He says that field mice invaded the Assyrian camp during the night and gnawed the bowstrings, the straps of the shields, leaving the army defenseless. And some scholars have suggested that the mice were carriers of plague, that Herodotus' story and the biblical account describe the same event from different perspectives. But Herodotus was describing a different campaign, in Egypt, not in Judah. And mice do not kill 185,000 men in one night. The fourth theory is the most modern and scientific, an atmospheric event. A Khamsin wind, a desert wind that transports fine sand, could have caused mass suffocation. Or perhaps a sudden release of volcanic gases, carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide. There are historical precedents for such events. Lake Nyos in Cameroon released carbon dioxide in 1986, killing 1,700 people while they slept. No symptoms, no warning. They simply stopped breathing. But Jerusalem is not near any volcano. There are no lakes capable of releasing lethal gases. And an atmospheric event would have also affected the city. It would have killed the inhabitants of Jerusalem, along with the Assyrians. And so the last possibility remains. The most unsettling. The one no one wants to seriously consider, which was exactly what the text says it was. A direct intervention. An act of divine judgment carried out by something that does not operate according to the natural laws we know. Because if you eliminate all impossible explanations, whatever remains, no matter how improbable it seems, must be the truth. And the truth is that 185,000 men woke up dead without apparent cause. And the most powerful empire in the world retreated, and the king who had never lost a battle fled silently. And the city that should have been destroyed remained intact. And the God who was blasphemed proved to be real in the most unequivocal way possible, by erasing an army from existence. But there is something more in this story, something that goes beyond the military miracle. Because the destruction of the Assyrian army was not just a victory for Judah, it was a declaration, a line in the sand that separated Yahweh from all other gods. Sennacherib had asked, "Which god has been able to deliver your land from my hand?" It was a valid question. No god had done so. The gods of Hamath did not save Hamath. The gods of Arpad did not save Arpad. The gods of Samaria did not save Samaria. Every nation that trusted in their deities fell before Assyria, because those deities were human projections, idols carved in wood and cast in metal. They had no power, they had no will, they had no real existence. But Yahweh was different. Not because he was stronger in a military sense, but because he was real. And that reality manifested in the most brutal way possible. Not with fire from the sky, not with earthquakes, not with spectacle, but with silence. With the sudden absence of 185,000 lives. And that is what makes this event unique in ancient history. It is not just a miraculous battle. It is an ontological demonstration, a proof of existence. Because if Yahweh was not real, then 185,000 soldiers should not have died. The Assyrian Empire should have taken Jerusalem. History should have followed its natural course. But it did not. Ezekias lived another 15 years after this. He built the Siloam Tunnel, a masterpiece of engineering that brought water from the Gihon Spring into the walls of Jerusalem. That tunnel still exists. You can walk through it today. And on its walls, there is an inscription describing its construction. It does not mention the miracle of Sennacherib, but it does not need to. The tunnel itself is a testimony, because only a city that had survived the impossible would build something like this. Sennacherib never returned to Judah. The rest of his reign was spent consolidating the empire, building palaces, fighting on other frontiers. But Jerusalem remained intact. An anomaly, a city that should have been in ashes but remained standing. And when he died, murdered by his own sons, the prophecy was fulfilled. Every word Isaiah had spoken was fulfilled. Not metaphorically, literally. And the Assyrian scribes, those meticulous recorders of victories, remained silent about Jerusalem. Because they had no way to explain what had happened without admitting the inadmissible. That they had lost. That their king had fled. That their army had been wiped out. And that omission is the most powerful proof. Because the Assyrians did not lie about their victories. They exaggerated them. They glorified them. But when they lost, they simply did not mention it. And the silence in Sennacherib's annals about Jerusalem's final fate is more eloquent than any inscription. But this story is not just about Assyria. It is not just about Hezekiah. It is about the nature of power. About what happens when human absolute power faces something greater than itself. Because Sennacherib had everything. He had armies. He had technology. He had history on his side. Every previous battle had ended in victory. Every besieged city had fallen. The mathematics were on his side. Logic was on his side. Everything was on his side. Except for one thing. He had touched what he should not have touched. He had blasphemed against something real. And that blasphemy cost him his army, his reputation, and eventually his life. And that brings us to the mirror. Because we all operate under the illusion of control. We believe that if we have enough resources, enough planning, enough power, we can achieve anything. We believe that the universe operates according to rules that we can master. That success is a matter of strategy and execution. And maybe you're right. Maybe everything in your life so far has taught you that power is the answer. That numbers matter. That brute force is enough. And perhaps you've built your empire, small or large, on that premise. You've surrounded your objectives like Sennacherib surrounded Jerusalem. You've brought all your resources. You've blocked all exits. You've calculated all the probabilities. And you're waiting for surrender. You're waiting for logic to prevail. For mathematics to work. For the universe to recognize your superiority. But there is something Sennacherib did not calculate. He did not account for a variable outside his equation. A force that did not respond to military strategy. A reality that was not impressed by numbers. And when that variable was activated, all its calculations became irrelevant. 185,000 soldiers meant nothing. The siege machines were useless. Reputation didn't matter. All of Assyria's accumulated power evaporated in a single night. So the question for you, while you build your walls and gather your armies and calculate your victories, is this. Have you considered what is outside your equation? Have you asked if there are forces operating that do not respond to your logic? Have you touched something you should not have touched? Because if you have, then it doesn't matter how invincible you feel. It doesn't matter how many resources you control. It doesn't matter how perfect your strategy is. There are lines that, when crossed, activate responses that are beyond any human defense. And when you wake up and discover that everything you built has become silence, when your army of certainties has turned into corpses of illusions, when your power has revealed itself as the farce it always was, it will be too late to rethink your calculations. The question is not whether you are powerful. The question is, against what are you exercising that power? And if the answer is something greater than you, then perhaps, just perhaps, you should reconsider the siege. Because Sennacherib learned too late that there are battles that cannot be won with soldiers. There are walls that cannot be broken with battering rams. There are realities that do not submit to brute force. What is your Jerusalem? And are you sure that your 185,000 reasons will be enough?